Swadika, good morning and thank you for joining us on Newsline for Thursday, January 9th of 2014. My name is Sandra Hanun Saha. In this morning's top stories, the Constitutional Court has read its verdict on the case concerning Parliament's approval of the Charter Amendment Bill on Section 190, saying the proceeding was in violation of the Constitution. And in business news, the Thai National Shippers Council forecast that the nation's exports will grow by 5% in 2014. And now let's take a look at today's headlines. The Foreign Ministry has convened a meeting with ambassadors and diplomats to inform them of the situation of the upcoming Bangkok shutdown on January 13th. Sihasak Pongketgao, Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, on Wednesday met with ambassadors and diplomats to brief them on the current political situation, especially the planned Bangkok shutdown scheduled to take place next week. The Permanent Secretary assured the ambassadors and diplomats that the Thai government would adhere to the democratic principles in dealing with the People's Democratic Reform Committee, or PDRC, protesters. Permanent Secretary Sihasak also suggested all embassies put up embassy signs on their vehicles in order to get through places without trouble. Meanwhile, a number of ambassadors expressed their concerns over the situation as they feared the protests would obstruct their work, while asking the Thai side to provide safety to their diplomats and staff. The Center for Administration of Peace and Order, or CAPO, revealed on Wednesday it will be deploying 56 companies of police officers and 40 companies of soldiers to keep the peace during the January 13th demonstration. According to CAPO spokesman, Police Major General Piyai Utayo, the specific sites for deployment of the personnel are being deliberated. The policemen and soldiers will place emphasis on preventing occurrences of violence and on facilitating traffic for the public. Checkpoints will also be set up to deter wrongdoing, and plans for the protection of civilians and members of the press will be implemented. National Security Council Secretary General Paradon Patanathabut said on Wednesday that emphasis was being placed on guarding against hidden threats that could stir up violence. Lieutenant General Paradon said this was because the People's Democratic Reform Committee would not be the only group staging movements during the upcoming period. The Ministry of Public Health has ordered hospitals under its jurisdiction to reschedule patient visits to avoid the period of Bangkok shutdown next week. According to Dr. Supan C. Thama, Director General of the Department of Medical Services, patient visits will be moved forward to an earlier date in order to avoid the period from January 13th onward. Public hospitals have also been told to ready their ambulances and patient beds to accommodate emergencies starting on the morning of January 13th. Dr. Suwat Siasiriwatana, Director of the Government Pharmaceutical Organization, has affirmed that his agency has a priority list for drugs and medical items, especially those required for serious conditions. The GPO has been making the medicine and items to ensure adequate supply, and the agency has already started distributing the items to hospitals that were running low on inventory. The GPO factory will operate as normal if possible, but it will switch to using the plant in Rangsit if the situation calls for such a move. The Ministry of Tourism and Sports will set up an information center to help tourists who might be affected by the anti-government protests expected to paralyze Bangkok on January 13th. Permanent Secretary for Tourism and Sports, Suwat Sittilaw, revealed that the government was set to establish a help center to provide tourists with information on how to avoid protest sites and which routes they should travel through, as well as information on hotels and tourist attractions. The information will be provided in 7 different languages. Furthermore, volunteers will be sent out to various locations to assist tourists, while vehicles will be put on standby to facilitate their traveling in case of an emergency. He also forecast that the prolonged demonstrations could cost Thailand over 10 billion baht in tourism revenue, adding that 60 to 80% of tourists last month canceled their trips to Thailand following the rising political tension. He, however, affirmed that the ministry had been preparing stimulus measures to help trigger the damaged tourism sector once the situation was back to normal. The government has decided to call off Children's Day activities previously set to be held at Government House due to concerns over the safety of participants amid ongoing protests. As Children's Day is approaching on January 11th, Deputy Metropolitan Police Chief Police Major General Adun Norongsak has asked for cooperation from the Student and People Network for Thailand's Reform, or STR, which has been staging a prolonged demonstration outside Government House in vacating the site in order to allow Children's Day activities to be held in the compound. In a response from STR Corps leader Uthai Yodmani, the protesters will not relocate, although the authorities will be permitted to organize the event for the kids and their parents inside Government House. Therefore, Police Major General Adun reported that the government had to cancel the much-awaited event, citing that the area was considered prone to violence. The cancellation was to ensure safety for the fairgoers. The Constitutional Court has read its verdict on the case concerning Parliament's approval of the Charter Amendment Bill on Section 190, saying the proceeding was in violation of the Constitution. Previously, former Democrat MP Wirat Galayasiri asked the Constitutional Court to deliberate whether or not the parliamentarians who voted for the bill seeking to revise Section 190 were trying to overturn the country's administrative system and acquire unconstitutional power. The alleged include House Speaker Somsakhit Suranon, Senate Speaker Nikhom Wairachapanit, and 381 MPs and senators. After deliberation, Mr. Tawikiat Minakanit, one of the judges, announced that the court found all the defendants guilty as charged. He pointed out that Parliament's review of the amendment bill was carried out in a hasty manner, with the debate time cut short to facilitate the House majority's passing of the bill. Meanwhile, another judge, Taran Pakdi Thanakul, stated that Section 190 is an important legislation which obligates Parliament to review international treaties prior to their enactment. It also stipulates that the Cabinet must submit the negotiation frameworks of such treaties to Parliament for approval beforehand. Therefore, the amendment of this section was considered by the tribunal as an attempt to deprive Parliament of its power and give absolute control to the administrative body, a violation of Section 68. The court's verdict has resulted in the nullification of the controversial bill. The Constitution Court on Wednesday held its first hearing on the 2 trillion baht loan bill to rule whether or not the passing of the bill was constitutional. The first hearing started with Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Kitirat Naranong defending the bill, saying off-budget borrowings would not pose a threat to the public debt burden, which would still be kept under 60% of the country's GDP. He added that the bill was nothing new, as the previous government, led by the Democrat Party, did it once 3 years ago. Meanwhile, Transport Minister Chachat Sitipan told the court that all of the 53 planned projects were constitutional and met the requirements of the Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, while assuring that the 2.2 trillion baht loan was transparent and open to scrutiny. The bill came under heavy attack by the Democrat Party, who claimed that such an enormous amount of loans would leave a huge burden on generations to come, incurring an estimated 3 trillion baht interest over the next 50 years. The Constitution Court will hold the second hearing on January 15th at 10 a.m. The Supreme Administrative Court on Wednesday refused to consider petitions filed by 29 Pheu Thai candidates who were not able to register for the upcoming election. The 29 Pheu Thai candidates had asked the court to order the Election Commission to reopen registration venues for the election in 28 constituencies in 8 southern provinces so they could register. The registration was interrupted by protesters who wanted to see a political reform completed before the general election took place. The court, however, said it did not have any jurisdiction to rule on election-related matters, adding that the power belonged to the Supreme Court as it was part of the election process. And Ubon Ratchathani province is gearing up for the advent of the ASEAN community, promoting more cooperation between the private sector and the government. During a meeting held in preparation for the ASEAN formation, Ubon Ratchathani Governor Wanchai Suthiwarachai said everyone in the country should be involved in the process of mobilizing Thailand forward ahead of the realization of ASEAN. He said government agencies and private organizations would have to work closely and efficiently with one another in order to improve the nation as a whole. The governor went on to say that both the government and private organizations would help communities educating their people pertaining to the ASEAN formation, as well as strengthening the country by enhancing its potential and competitiveness. The meeting saw over 300 participants who shared thoughts and ideas on how Thailand could integrate and apply its development strategies to the purpose of the ASEAN community. And that's the end of our first segment for this morning. We now take a short break, but up next we have the business news, so don't go away.
Open the world of information. Embrace public participation. Present Thainess to the world. New dimension of the government's public relations. The 80th anniversary of the Public Relations Department. Creative media for the society. Mobilizing Thailand towards the ASEAN community.
เมื่อมนุษย์ทำลายสมดุลทางธรรมชาติและมนุษย์ก็เป็นผู้ประสบภัยพิบัติจากธรรมชาติร่วมสร้างอนาคตลดภัยพิบัติระดมพลังพลิกฟื้นคืนผืนป่าในทุกชุมชนทั่วประเทศ
For those who have Android smartphones, you can download a PRD News application by searching for PRD News English in Play Store. That way, you can stay up to date with the latest happenings in Thailand.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline, and now on to our business stories. The government vows to pay farmers who pledged their crops under its rice mortgage scheme within January 15th. The announcement came after a Tuesday gathering of about 500 farmers from Pisnulok, Nakhon Sawan, Pichit, Sukhothai, and Kamphaeng Phet, sealing off Highway number 117. They have expressed their anger at the government's delay in distributing the funds from the scheme, which is 5 months overdue. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Kittirat Naranong has apologized to the farmers for the delay, saying that the payment process was disrupted during the 3-week seizure by the People's Democratic Reform Committee last November. Nonetheless, he said that the ministry has urged the Bank for Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives, or BAAC, to accelerate the process. He said the BAAC has set aside 10 billion baht to pay farmers who already pledged their crops but have yet to receive the payment within January 15th. Regarding a request by the farmers to the BAAC to impose a debt suspension program to relieve them from interest burdens, Pichit Governor Surachai Khanasa said that he would coordinate with the bank and the government in order to find a suitable solution on the matter. The Thai National Shippers Council has forecast that the nation's exports will grow by 5% in 2014 due to the recovery in the global economy. According to Thai National Shippers Council President Nophon Tepsitha, the export industry saw a 0.5% negative growth in 2013. However, 2014, he said, should see a turnaround as the global economy is recovering, with a 5% growth in exports expected. Mr. Nophon further stated that even though the economic outlook for 2014 seems to be positive, it is still necessary to appropriately adjust the nation's exporting strategies to achieve long-term success. The Commerce Minister reported the forecast to the Cabinet last December. Meanwhile, the Thai National Shippers Council has already come up with a strategy to effectively promote growth in exports. The next step would be to meet with industry representatives to further plan an efficient cooperation. Suvarnabhumi Airport sees a 40% drop in air passengers, with some airlines preparing to cancel their flights to Thailand after anti-government protesters announced to occupy Bangkok on the 13th of January. Director of Suvarnabhumi Airport, Raviwan Netrakawesana, said air passengers from China, Hong Kong, and Singapore had already decreased by 40%, resulting in a 20% drop in flights to Thailand. Singapore Airlines had informed the airport that it might cancel all flights to Suvarnabhumi from the 14th of January to the 25th of February due to concerns over the demonstrations. As for the airport's plan on the 13th of January, its shuttle bus route between Suvarnabhumi and Don Mueang airports will be adjusted, and more parking spaces will be provided for the passengers who want to take the airport's shuttle buses to nearby electric train stations. Most Southeast Asian stock markets rose on Wednesday, with Singapore and Indonesia recovering from 3 sessions of falls, while Malaysia marked its first gain in 6 sessions as strong U.S. trade data bolstered sentiment across Asia. Thai shares bucked the trend as investors booked quick profits in shares such as airports of Thailand amid domestic political tensions. The SET index was down 0.4% at 1,257.73 after a rally in the previous session. Singapore's Straits Times Index climbed 1% after a 1.7% drop in the past 3 sessions, while Malaysia's benchmark ended up 0.3%, trimming some of the 2.6% drop over the past 5 trading days. In Jakarta, mining shares rose 1.7%, outperforming the broader benchmark, which was up 0.6% after the government sought to ease a looming mineral export ban. Vietnam rose for a 4th session, closing up 0.74% at a near 7-month high, led by strong rises in shares of the energy sector and securities firms on positive investor sentiment. And before our next break, here's a quick look at the exchange rates and commodity prices.
Open the world of information. Embrace public participation. Present Thainess to the world. new dimension of the government's public relations. The 80th anniversary of the Public Relations Department, creative media for the society, mobilizing Thailand towards the ASEAN community.
เมื่อมนุษย์ทำลายสมดุลทางธรรมชาติแล้วมนุษย์ก็เป็นผู้ประสบภัยพิบัติจากธรรมชาติร่วมสร้างอนาคตลดภัยพิบัติระดมพลังพลิกฟื้นคืนผืนป่าในทุกชุมชนทั่วประเทศ
For those who have Android smartphones, you can download a PRD News application by searching for PRD News English in Play Store. That way, you can stay up to date with the latest happenings in Thailand.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. Yupo Subdistrict in Yala Province is holding a Children's Day festival to celebrate the importance of children to the nation. The mayor of Yupo Subdistrict and all related agencies, including the Army, have joined hands in setting up the annual Children's Day event for 2014. The festival aims to promote love and teamwork among young kids through fun and games. Moreover, school children and their parents have been very involved and showed great interest in the event. The overall atmosphere has been filled with fun and laughter, especially on stage where the kids were performing. Activities included fun quizzes with prizes, performances by the children, fun and games by the Army personnel, as well as drinks and snacks for everyone at the event. And that is it for today's edition of Newsline. For any comments or suggestions, please feel free to email them to us at newsline.nbt@gmail.com. The National Broadcasting Services of Thailand, or NBT, is organizing activities to celebrate the Children's Day on Saturday, January 11th. And there will be news anchoring competitions in both Thai and English. All children are welcome to join. The registration period is 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at NBT, and we hope to see you all on Saturday. We're going to say goodbye with the footage of wildlife at Ubon Ratchathani Zoo. Have a great day. I'm Sandra Hanut Saha. Sawasdee ka.